Hello and welcome to another edition of Penn State Sports Night. I'm Mike Marcantonini alongside Brendan Pfeiffer and Jack Hirsch. We're going to talk a little NBA. So, Jack, let's get things started. Big weekend for Anthony Davis, am I right?
Yeah, well, first of all, he gets his all-star starting bid, and he goes out there and drops 52 points, smashes Wilt Chamberlain's 55-year-old record of 42 points. He wins All-Star Game MVP.
10 rebounds as well for a double-double.
Yeah, and then, of course, the night caps off with the Pelicans trade for Boogie Cousins. DeMarcus Cousins is now a member of the New Orleans Pelicans. Yeah. And that's probably the news coming out of the All-Star Game. And we can talk about that later, but this is really significant here, especially right after all this thing. And Anthony Davis has not had success in his career in the NBA so far. With the Pelicans, I think only making the playoffs once in his career.
As an 8 seed.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, I mean, this just changes everything for him.
So how, both you guys, how does this trade, and we'll start with you, Brendan, how does this trade affect the NBA right now?
Well, first of all, the Pelicans evidently got away with highway robbery. They traded for DeMarcus Cousins, and they gave up Buddy Hield and evidently like a bag of bones. So first of all, that's one thing. And second of all, I think it really affects, if you look at the Golden State Warriors, one of the biggest criticisms about the Warriors this year, they have no inside presence. And now if the Pelicans can manage to get that 8 seed and they go up against the Warriors in the first round of the playoffs, it's gonna be tough for the Warriors because who's gonna guard DeMarcus? Who's gonna guard Anthony Davis? Two of the best big men in the league, and the Warriors, they have no answer for that right now.
Jack, what does this do for the NBA? How much does this shake it up?
Well, I think now it looks like the Kings, who are currently the 9th seed in the West, they might not win another game this year in the 25 they have left. So they're going to free fall, and that's going to allow a team like the Pelicans, who are right now the 11th seed, to try and sneak in there. Right now, after the Oklahoma City Thunder, you have just nothing left in the West. I mean, you got the really solid seven teams, with the Oklahoma City Thunder being 32-5, and then after that you've got nothing. So that'll allow a big opening for the Pelicans to get maybe Anthony Davis's second playoff appearance, and then hopefully make a run. But they would obviously have to get past Golden State first.
Sure.
What this trade really does is it affects some of the draft assets, and it kind of seems like the Kings have now become the Brooklyn Nets, if you will, of the East, or of the West.
So which main teams are affected by this in the draft?
Well, I mean, we have to look at Philly, who made that huge trade a couple years ago with Nick Stauskas and Jason Thompson, and they got a lot of picks out of that. And one of the biggest deals in that trade was not the players involved, but the draft picks that Sacramento unloaded.
Sure.
So right now, as it stands, Philadelphia has the right to switch draft picks, first-round draft picks, with Sacramento this year. Right now, Philadelphia they are the 13 seed in the Eastern Conference, but they're on the rise, obviously, as they had that 10-win month of January.
Yeah, only a few games out of that final playoff spot in the East.
Yeah, so if they get a good rolling, I mean, maybe, I'm not saying they'll make the playoffs this year, but they'll certainly have a higher pick than Sacramento, who, again, may not win another game with the roster they have left. And I know you think this is absolutely terrible for the present state of the Sacramento Kings right now.
Definitely so. And the Sacramento Kings, they're a train wreck of a franchise. Players go there and they die. I feel so bad for Buddy Hield. I mean, he's such a promising young guard, and he's going to a terrible organization that has no leadership anymore, no face of the franchise because DeMarcus is gone. You just look at the Kings, like recent draft picks. You look at Ben McLemore, Willie Cauley-Stein, Nick Stauskas, as you talked about. Scalabrine. They haven't done anything.
Doesn't seem to be a lot of direction there at all.
At all. It's horrible. I just feel bad for Buddy Hield and the rest of the players going to that team.
So you talked a little about the Kings roster as it stands right now after the trade. What does this trade do for the Pelicans? Obviously, you're bringing in one of the best big men to pair with Anthony Davis. What about the rest of that roster?
The rest of the roster, that's the thing. It's a bit shaky. They're very, very thin at shooting guard. All they have is Etuan Moore. They have no other shooting guard in the depth chart. I know I'll let Jack touch on this. Tim Frazier, expect him to get a lot more minutes now because not as many guards on the roster. But they have a lot of power forwards. And as the trade deadline is approaching, expect them to part ways with Terrence Jones or maybe even Omri Caspi.
Yep, and Omri Caspi, obviously the throw into that deal along with Boogie Cousins. So, Jack, Brendan just touched on Tim Frazier. So, backup point guard right now to Drew Holiday. They cleared a little bit of the guard logjam by setting Tyreek Evans and Langston Galloway to to Sacramento in that trade. So how about Tim Frazier sitting behind Drew Holiday right now?
Well, yeah, but at first I have to touch on it is that Omiri Caspi was the headline of this deal for me, being the only Israeli-born player in the NBA.
Please, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we look at Tim Frazier, and he had a great start to the season when Drew Holiday was out caring for his wife, Lauren Holiday, and she's doing really well, and we wish her the best. The former U.S. women's national team soccer player. But he had a great start to the season, averaged 10 points a game and 7 assists in the first month. Patrick Chambers said really gave him a lot of praise early in the season for the way he was playing. They were in contact. But now Holiday came back. He's having a pretty good season, averaging about 16 points and 7.5 assists a game. So what we could see now is that Tim Frazier could slide into the point guard position a little bit on the court, and maybe Drew Holiday is going to play a little two guard here, and that'll be a really interesting combination with such a small backcourt paired with such a big front court with Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins, both 6'11".
For sure.
So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah. All right, so final thoughts, guys, on this trade in general. Now, the big question is for the Pelicans, they get a year and a half out of Boogie Cousins, definitely, but what are the odds they re-sign him?
It's really going to depend how they do the rest of the season and next year.
It's going to be, we're talking big money here to
Yeah.
re-sign him after next season.
Of course, and I think if they can show signs of improvement, maybe make a run at the playoffs this year and certainly next year, that gives him more incentive to stay because he was going nowhere with the Kings at all.
Yeah, he wanted to get out.
Oh, yeah.
They seemed really set on keeping him, and they didn't. It was actually really surprising. He is going to end up passing up on $30 million because he's not going to sign an extension with the Kings. So what that means is that New Orleans is going to have to work to re-sign him because they don't have as much money to work with, and he's going to get a similar offer from any other way he's going. Now with the new CBA, it's a lot different. Players are making way more money now, so it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. I know New Orleans commented that they think they can re-sign him to an extension this summer, so that'll be a really hot topic to watch this summer.
Definitely, and Dave Yeager, the former coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, he made it work with Gasol and Randolph, two very, what's the word I'm looking for? They had a very big presence in Memphis, and they both clogged up the paint, and I hope he can make it work for the sake of Cousins. He can make it work with the Pelicans because he has a very talented front court now, and if he can make it work and if the chemistry with Cousins and Davis is flowing, then I think Cousins definitely has more of an incentive to stay.
Yeah, and I think they've been trying to pair an offensive guy with Anthony Davis, and Cousins obviously is that with amazing post play, and he's now added that three-point shot to his game last year. And that was something they almost did when trading for Philadelphia's Jahlil Okafor a couple weeks ago when that deal eventually fell through due to pick protection. So I think they got something they can work with. And it seems like this further is going off you need a big 2, big 3, big 4. I know you said earlier you think New Orleans has a big 2.5 now with Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, and Drew Holiday being that half, if you want to call it. So, I mean, we saw it with the Heat first, or even the Celtics first. Mm-hmm. They had that big 4, then the Heat got the big 3, and then we saw the failed attempt with the Lakers, though, with Steve Nash, Dwight Howard, and Kobe Bryant. So it'll be interesting to see how this big 3, 2.5, whatever you want to call it, works out in New Orleans.
Okay, good stuff, fellas. That's all the time we have right now. But for Jack Hirsch, Brendan Pfeiffer, I'm Mike Marcantonini. When we come back, talking a little spring training baseball.
Trust the process.
Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Christian Kurpax alongside Mike Marcantonini, talking some spring training baseball in Major League Baseball. It's here. It's right around the corner.
Can't wait for the regular season.
Yeah, spring training's here, spring weather's here, smell of baseball's in the air. Give me the team you're watching this spring.
Yeah, so the team I'm looking at, probably not a contender this season, especially in a tough AL East, but I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Rays as a team to really I'm really going to keep my eye on throughout spring training and the rest of the season up until the trade deadline, because this is a young team. Mainly, I'm looking at them because there's a wealth of young starting pitching there in Tampa Bay, led by Chris Archer. Then you got Jake Odorizzi, Alex Cobb, a couple other arms there. This is a team that could make some moves at the deadline. They're again, like I said, probably not going to be a contender. So if they really want to sell and maybe bring back some more bats or just rebuild the team a different way, there's a lot of young starting pitching to trade there. And of course, Chris Archer, one of the best young pitchers in the game. not even just in the American League, or not even just one of the best right-handers, one of the best pitchers in the game, they could really sell high on him if he has a good season. They traded Matt Moore at the deadline last year, the Giants, so they could be more active this year at the deadline, even in spring training, make some moves now. They already traded away a key piece to their team, Logan Forsythe, in a 1-for-1 swap with the Dodgers for right-handed pitching prospect Jose De Leon. So that's a big get for them, because one of the Dodgers' top prospects, one of the best prospects in baseball. So they're clearly bringing in some more pitching prospects that are, De Leon's a guy who could contribute this year, but probably more so down the road. So if they're bringing in guys like that, they can push out in trades a couple of the guys that are already in their rotation. So that's a team for me to watch. Also, not a scary lineup, but some really underrated pieces there. Brad Miller, a 20-homer guy. Matt Duffy, they brought back in the Moore trade. Kevin Kiermaier is one of the best defensive outfielders in baseball. Gold Glover. And Evan Longoria is still there, so I'm keeping an eye out for the Rays. How about you?
Yeah, I'm sticking to contenders. I'm going with the New York Mets, a team that was completely derailed by injuries, somehow made it into the postseason 2016.
And a lot of people thought that was just a win for them, just getting in the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely. And they didn't have Cespedes for some time in mid-April. They lost Neil Walker. They didn't have their captain, David Wright. And more importantly, their rotation was gone. Steven Matz was gone with the Bone Spurs. Jacob deGrom was gone. Matt Harvey was not the Dark Knight he was. And now they brought Cespedes back, have Neil Walker, who could even sign a multi-year deal. David Wright will be back, and some vital additions to the bullpen in Jerry Blevins. Jerry's Familia is going to probably be suspended by Major League Baseball to start the year. So having a guy like Blevins added back into the mix kind of shortened the game more. And this team could very well win the World Series if that rotation after Noah Syndergaard kind of just remains healthy and does their thing. So while I'm watching the Chicago Cubs to seeing if they don't fall into a hangover.
That's the team to beat.
Now. So I'm watching them to see if they don't fall into a hangover. They have some key subtractions, but the Mets are right there, and I think by this season they could overtake them as the National League champs.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, we chose to go players to watch in addition to teams to watch. Who's your guy?
Yeah, player to watch this year, I'm looking at Eric Hosmer. This is a guy who's in a contract year with the Kansas City Royals. Helped them, was a huge piece to both of their World Series team, obviously bringing back one title of the 2 appearances in the World Series. So, a guy who scored that game-tying run in Game 5 that helped them eventually extend that game in Citi Field to extra innings. Eventually, they clinched that night and win the World Series. So this is a guy who's a big-time player. I think he's an elite player in this game. A lot of people maybe don't think he's even a top 5 first baseman at his position, but I think this guy is an elite player. 25 home runs last year, 104 RBIs. Both were career highs. Only hit 266. The average has got to go up a little bit in a contract year, you would think. But because he's in a contract year, because the Royals have to also think about re-signing Lorenzo Cain, they've already made some moves to trade Wade Davis. They sent him to the Cubs for Jorge Soler. So this is a team that their window of opportunity you'd think is still open, but quite barely. But if they re-sign him, that'll be interesting. But also, he's playing for a contract. If it's not with the Royals, it's going to be with somebody else. So I'm looking at him. I think, like I said, I think he's elite, but he's still behind Paul Goldschmidt, Miguel Cabrera, Anthony Rizzo, and some others at his own position. But big year from Eric Hosmer, and he's going to break the bank. So I'm looking at Haas there in KC. How about you? Who are you looking at?
I'm looking at someone that we seem to forget. Andrew McCutchen, perennial all-star, former MVP.
Yeah, moving to right field this year from center.
Yeah, absolutely. And last season, he set career lows in batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS. After finishing 5th in the MVP voting, was an all-star the year before, Silver Slugger. His name was circled around trade rumors in the offseason. And if he can kind of get back to that MVP form, you could very well see him be flipped, because the Pittsburgh Pirates kind of look like they want to trade him or are looking to trade him, because that's a very team-friendly. So while I do have my eyes on the baby bombers at the Yankees camp, Andrew McCutchen is the guy who you want to see bounce back, and down the road you kind of are interested in seeing what he could be swung for. So now we just focus on looking ahead. Let's take a step back. What was your move of the offseason?
I got to go with the Edwin Encarnacion going from Toronto to Cleveland. Not only is this a good baseball move, bringing in a player of his caliber, but this is a good team contract for them. Mm-hmm. 3 years, $60 million with a 4th-year option, a team option for $20 million. So even if the Indians do pick up that 4th-year option, that's still a 4 years for $80 million. I mean, I'll take that any day when I can get a guy who's consistently going to hit 40 home runs. He's done it for the past 4 out of the last 5 years, I believe. He's going to drive in 100 runs, and he's just going to be that presence in the lineup that the Indians, they had it a little bit last year with Mike Napoli, but they're not bringing back Napoli. They had to fill that void, and they filled that void and then some bringing in Encarnacion. So one of the best hitters overall in the game. Again, 40 home runs regularly. But not only is he a great hitter, but he's a right-handed bat, which they wanted to bring back because, of course, Napoli right-handed. They wanted to bring back another righty to sit behind Francisco Lindor in that lineup. Now, Lindor's going to be a guy at the top of your lineup. Probably that team's 3-hitter, being a left-handed guy. So you have Lindor in the 3-hole, lefty, then you put Encarnacion at 4, the big right-handed bopper, and then behind him maybe Carlos Santana. You move in the 5-hole, switch hitter. So that lineup's looking pretty good, and it's not too left-handed heavy. It's not too right-handed heavy. But bringing in Edwin Encarnacion, that probably puts the Indians along with the Red Sox as the favorites in the American League, and maybe they get back to the World Series. So I think that's a huge move for them to keep their window of contention open. How about you?
I'm glad you mentioned the Red Sox because the Red Sox made a move too.
No.
But if you're talking the
Big one.
if you're talking the biggest offseason move in general, I'm going with Chris Sale to Boston because of the pitcher the Red Sox got. They got a guy who's probably going to be in front of the reigning AL Cy Young Award winner in Rick Porcello, joining David Price, who won the award in 2012. So that rotation is solidly set. And they lost David Ortiz, so that's a big offensive hole that they had to fill. They filled it with pitching, which you can never have too much pitching. And look at the White Sox, how stacked the farm system looks. Who would have known that in the same offseason? Remember, they shipped Adam Eaton over to the Nationals. In the same offseason, they got Yoan Moncada and Lucas Giolito to really stack their farm system since they've been to the World Series. They've been just drowning in mediocrity. So to see them restack and regroup and also see the Red Sox become AL favorites, in my opinion, it's just a huge move overall.
Definitely both Sox teams benefit from that. Giolito's a guy I like a lot. I think he's going to blossom.
Yeah.
And of course, Moncada. It's a
He's a
stud
real
prospect. So I like that. Now, Sale, beast. But
You can't get any better than
yeah,
Chris Sale.
I just think that the offensive production that the Indians are going to get at Edwin Encarnacion, I think is going to set them above. But, both huge moves.
Both huge moves. So there's definitely a debate there. But, hey, baseball, we'll soon find out. Baseball's right around the corner.
It's going to be a fun season, no doubt.
It should be a fun season. Once again, I'm Christian Kirkpatrick, along with Mark Antonini. We'll be right back here on Penn State Sports Night.
And for the latest in Penn State sports, I'm Erin Dolan. Penn State's wrestling clinched the NWCA dual meet title against Oklahoma State this past weekend. This was their second straight dual meet title. The Nittany Lions will head to Indiana University for the Big Ten Championship in 2 weeks. Penn State has won 5 of the last 6 crowns, and they're ready for one more. Penn State basketball had an up-and-down season, but one of the highlights was the team's upset win over Maryland. Our Brendan Pfeiffer recaps the Nittany Lions' big win.
Mello Trimble and number 21 Maryland came to town to take on the Nittany Lions at the Bryce Jordan Center. Throughout the game, Penn State was able to control the tempo and hit open shots. They limited Maryland's fast break opportunities and were able to settle into their own half-court offense. Thanks to a monster second half by freshman Lamar Stevens, which included 16 of his 25 points, Penn State was able to pull off the upset 70-64, giving the Terps their second straight loss. Brendan Pfeiffer, Penn State Sports Night.